Introduction. Free water from your own roof. Why is this illegal in 12 states? Listen to that sound, the steady drum of rain on a roof. For almost all of human history, that sound meant one thing: life itself. It meant the fields would grow, the rivers would swell, and a community would survive one more season. Yet today, in parts of the United States, if you step outside, look up at your own roof, and try to catch that same rain in a simple barrel, you might be breaking the law. Welcome to Historia Prime. In the next moments, we explore a hidden conflict shaping your future. The forgotten engineering of ancient empires, the survival genius of an isolated island nation, and the surprising legal maze that decides who truly owns the water falling from the sky. Take your own home, for example. A typical 2,000 square foot roof in a region with 30 inches of annual rain receives more than 18,000 gallons of water a year. That isn't fantasy, it's pure math. And that water system, the cheapest, cleanest, most reliable one on your property, already exists. It's sitting above your head right now. Yet most Americans let it vanish into storm drains, relying instead on a costly, aging municipal pipe buried beneath the street. So the real question becomes, why did we abandon thousands of years of proven human ingenuity? And why does the government react so sharply when ordinary people begin catching their own rain? To answer that, we cannot stay in the present. We have to go back to civilizations that never separated the roof that sheltered them from the water that sustained them. Only then can we understand how something as simple as harvesting rain became one of the most regulated acts in modern America. Part 1. The Blueprint of Antiquity. Rome's Hidden Water Machines. When most people picture Roman water engineering, they imagine the towering aqueducts, those impossible stone bridges that carried rivers across mountains and into the heart of an empire. But the Romans guarded a deeper truth, one modern city planners have forgotten. Real resilience comes from redundancy. An empire survives not on a single pipe, but on a system that can adapt when the world around it changes. To see that system, we travel to Pompeii, just before Vesuvius buried its streets in ash. At first glance, Pompeii flourished, yet beneath its wealth lay a quiet crisis. Rain arrived in violent bursts during the spring, then abandoned the city for months at a time. Groundwater lay trapped 20 to 30 meters below volcanic rock, nearly unreachable and nearly undrinkable. So when the Romans couldn't dig down, they looked up. Step inside a wealthy Roman home, a domus, and you'd enter the atrium, open and echoing, lit by a perfect rectangle of sky. This opening, the compluvium, was framed by inward-sloping roof tiles that guided every drop of rain toward the center of the house. And beneath it, carved into the mosaic floor like a piece of artwork, sat the impluvium. To an untrained eye, the impluvium looks decorative, a reflecting pool meant to impress guests. But once you understand it, you realize it isn't a decoration at all. It's a machine. When storms pounded Pompeii, the roof channeled torrents of water directly into the impluvium. Yet the Romans understood something crucial. The first rain after a long summer is dirty. Dust, soot, droppings, debris. None of it belonged in drinking water. And so they built a dual drain system. At the beginning of a storm, a simple lever opened a primary drain that flushed the dirty runoff straight into the street. Then, once the roof was washed clean, the servant closed the street drain and opened the second. That was the moment the machine came alive. Fresh rainwater, now clean, fell into the impluvium and slipped through layers of porous stone and sand before descending into a sealed, underground cistern hidden beneath the house. Down there, in cool darkness, the water stayed pure, protected from heat, algae, insects and contamination. Whenever the family needed water, they lowered a bucket through a stone wellhead called a putil, right inside their own home. And the system didn't just store water, it shaped the air. As water evaporated from the impluvium, it cooled the atrium like an ancient air conditioner. Hot air rose through the compluvium, pulling cooler, moist air through the shaded rooms of the house. The Roman roof was doing everything at once. It sheltered, it captured, it cleaned, it stored, it cooled. It was a complete survival system hidden in plain sight. To the Romans, a house that didn't help you secure your own water wasn't really a house at all. It was unfinished. It was vulnerable. And that simple idea, water and shelter as one, may be the lesson modern America needs most right now. Part 2. The Shipwrecked Nation, Bermuda's Masterclass in Survival. Now we move more than 1,000 years forward, leaving the calm Mediterranean for the violent mid-Atlantic. In 1609, the Sea Venture was thrown into a hurricane and shattered against Bermuda's coral reefs. The survivors crawled ashore with 2 discoveries. The island offered cedar for building a ship, and absolutely no fresh water at all. Bermuda sits on a porous limestone cap above an ancient volcano. There are no rivers, no lakes, and no groundwater worth drinking. Rain hits the island, sinks straight through the rock, and disappears into brackish seawater below. If you don't catch the rain the moment it falls, you simply don't survive. Early settlers tried English cottages, but Atlantic winds shredded them instantly, so they turned to the limestone beneath their feet, and over centuries created an architectural system so effective that it later became national law. Viewed from above, Bermuda looks frosted white. Every roof is blindingly bright and carved into steps. Those steps are not decoration. In hurricane winds, rain flies sideways at 100 miles an hour. A smooth roof would lift and tear away. The stepped slates break the wind and hold the roof down. At the same time, they slow the rain, guiding it into thick stone gutters carved directly into the house. Then comes the chemistry. Bermudians coat their roofs with lime wash, crushed limestone mixed with water. As rain runs across it, tiny amounts dissolve, raising the water's pH and killing bacteria before it ever reaches storage. The white surface also reflects brutal sun, keeping both the home and the cistern below cool. Today, Bermudian law is uncompromising. For every square foot of roof you build, you must provide 8 gallons of cistern capacity. You must capture at least 80% of the rainfall that touches your roof. There is no municipal water main, no backup system. On an island of 65,000 residents and hundreds of thousands of visitors, you are your own utility company. And through that necessity, Bermuda reveals a simple truth. When people are responsible for their own survival, conservation becomes instinct. You don't turn off the tap to save the planet. You turn it off because if you don't, your tank runs dry, and there is no water coming from anywhere else. Part 3. The Mathematics of the Sky, Reclaiming a Lost Science. We've seen how ancient empires and isolated islands mastered the rain. But what does any of that mean for you, sitting in a modern house with a modern roof, wondering whether rainwater is truly worth your time? Before the laws, before the controversy, we have to confront the one thing that makes this story unavoidable: the math. And the math is stunningly simple. For every inch of rain that falls on 1,000 square feet of roof, you can harvest about 620 gallons of water. That is the formula. No mystery, no engineering degree required. Just a clean relationship between the sky and the surface beneath it. Now picture a modest 2,000 square foot roof in a region with 30 inches of rain a year. That roof isn't just shedding water, it is being hit by roughly 37,000 gallons annually. Even if you lose 20% to splashing, evaporation, or your first flush system, you are still left with nearly 30,000 gallons of clean, soft water. Water without chlorine, water without fluoride, water without the heavy minerals that coat your pipes and clog your faucets. Water your garden will respond to instantly, but collecting it correctly is everything. A bucket under a gutter is not a water system. It's a stagnant pool waiting to generate mosquitoes. To reclaim this lost science, you need a simple, elegant structure that works just like the Roman machine. It begins with the catchment. A clean roof surface determines how pure the water will be. Metal roofs are ideal because they shed contaminants easily. Asphalt shingles are acceptable for gardens, but if you want drinking water, you'll need deeper filtration. From the catchment, the water moves into conveyance. Properly sloped gutters and downspouts seem mundane, yet they determine whether you collect water or waste it in a storm. Then comes the first flush diverter. This is the moment modern design meets ancient logic. The very first rain carries dust, pollen, and whatever has settled on your roof during dry weeks. The diverter solves that automatically. As the first dirty water fills a vertical pipe, a floating ball rises and seals it shut. Only the clean water that follows is allowed to pass into your tank. Hours later, a drip valve quietly empties the dirty chamber, so it's ready for the next storm. And finally, we reach storage, the part most people misunderstand. Your tank is not sized to match your yearly rainfall. It is sized to survive your longest dry spell. The tank is a time machine. It allows you to capture abundance during a storm and spend it gradually during a drought. Get that wrong, and even the best system will fail. But build it well, with screens to keep out debris, with diverters to keep the water clean, with tanks dark enough to block sunlight, and with pumps that deliver steady pressure. And you're not building a rain barrel. You're building decentralized, off-grid infrastructure. You're building independence. And that is where the real tension begins. Part 4. The Legal Labyrinth. Why is this illegal in 12 states? If the engineering works, if history has already proved the concept, and if the economics are overwhelmingly in your favor, then why is catching the rain that falls on your own roof controversial at all? Why, in 12 US states, does a simple act of self-reliance trigger regulations, volume caps, or outright bans? The answer splits America cleanly in half. In the West, the fight is about ownership. In the East, it is about control. So we begin in the arid American West, where the 19th century pioneers learned a harsh truth. Water was more valuable than gold. To keep settlers from killing each other, they created a legal doctrine called prior appropriation. Its rule was brutally simple: first in time, first in right. If a rancher carved a canal from a river in 1890, he earned a permanent right to that water. Anyone who arrived later held a junior right. And during droughts, junior rights could be cut entirely, until the senior user received every drop he was owed. But here is where the logic becomes astonishing. Under a strict interpretation of this doctrine, a raindrop does not belong to the person it falls on. It belongs to whoever holds the downstream senior right, because that raindrop is expected to join the watershed. If you catch it first, even on your roof, you are intercepting water that, on paper, already belongs to someone else. This is why Colorado became infamous. For more than a century, harvesting rainwater was flatly illegal. Only in 2016 did the state relax the rule, but even now the limit is just 110 gallons, 2 barrels, outdoors only. The message is unmistakable. The issue is not safety, it is your independence. Utah takes a similar approach. You may store up to 100 gallons freely, but if you want more, you must register your system with the state, and even then, you are capped at 2,500 gallons. The state wants to know exactly how much water sits in your backyard. Nevada goes further still. Without a formal water right, a document almost no homeowner possesses, your ability to harvest rain is heavily restricted. The state treats every raindrop as part of a delicate desert ecosystem, and therefore part of the regulated watershed. Then there is Oregon, where collecting water from a roof is legal, but collecting runoff from anything the state defines as surface water is not. A driveway, a parking lot, even a patch of ground can suddenly classify your rain as state waters, and the fines escalate quickly. Idaho follows the same philosophy. You may capture water off your roof, but once that water touches a natural drainage path, any creek or puddle that eventually connects to a stream, it becomes state property again. New Mexico generally encourages harvesting and even offers rebates, yet large systems fall under complex hybrid permitting, requiring state engineers to verify that downstream users remain unaffected. Washington took a different route in 2009. The state declared no permit was needed for rooftop harvesting, but they also reserved the power to shut down harvesting at any time if they believe cumulative rain collection threatens river flows. In other words, it is legal until they decide it isn't. That covers the West. So why do wetter states, with far more rainfall, still impose restrictions? There the issue shifts from ownership to public health and plumbing rules. In Arkansas, any indoor non-potable rainwater system must be designed by a licensed engineer. A DIY system is technically illegal. You pay thousands of dollars in fees just to flush a toilet with rainwater. Illinois only allows non-potable use and requires strict adherence to the Illinois Plumbing Code, demanding expensive backflow protections and professional installation. Ohio actually allows rainwater for drinking, but only if your system serves fewer than 25 people. Anything larger is legally treated as a public water utility, triggering federal EPA oversight. Georgia imposes tight limitations, partly because the state is locked in a decades-long water dispute with Florida and Alabama. When politics defines every drop, private harvesting becomes a tightly supervised privilege. And finally, North Carolina treats rainwater not as a tool of independence, but as a managed conservation resource. Codes are structured so the state remains the moderator of how rain is collected and used, preventing homeowners from drifting too far off-grid. These are the 12 states where the tension is real, where a falling raindrop isn't considered a gift but a legal object, one that may belong to someone else, threaten a water model, or disrupt a political balance. And in this maze of ownership, control, and fear of independence, we begin to see why something as ancient and natural as catching rain has become one of the most regulated acts in modern America. Part 5. The Hydropolitical Economy, the Utility Death Spiral. When we peel back the layers of ancient water law and modern plumbing codes, a more uncomfortable truth rises to the surface. The real battle over rainwater has never been only about rivers, biology, or engineering. At its core, it is about money, specifically the fragile economics of centralized water systems. To understand the tension, imagine the business model of a municipal water utility. These systems sit on enormous fixed costs. They build treatment plants worth billions. They maintain aging networks of pipes that run beneath entire cities. They test water constantly, treat it chemically, and fund pensions for thousands of employees. None of these costs disappear just because a city uses less water. So how do utilities pay for all of that? They sell water by the gallon. Every drop you buy helps keep a massive machine alive. Now picture a single neighborhood, 500 homes, deciding to get smart. Each installs a competent rainwater system. Suddenly those families are watering their lawns, washing their cars, even flushing their toilets with rain instead of municipal water. Their bill drops by half, maybe more. For the homeowner, that is a moment of freedom. But for the utility, it is a financial crisis. The revenue collapses overnight, yet the debts remain exactly the same. And so the utility raises the price of water to compensate. But higher prices only push more families to harvest rain. This is the point at which economists give the phenomenon its haunting name, the utility death spiral. Independence spreads, revenue shrinks, rates rise, more people leave, and the spiral tightens. The system collapses not because the technology fails, but because the people succeed, and the spiral cuts deeper. In many American cities, water utilities are treated as hidden revenue streams. Through a practice called a municipal sweep, the city quietly siphons excess water profits into unrelated budgets, potholes, police departments, local projects. If you live outside city limits but still rely on city water, you are effectively paying a tax to a government you cannot vote for. So when you catch rain, you are not just filling a barrel. You are unplugging yourself from a municipal cash flow. Every gallon you harvest is a gallon the city cannot sell. Rainwater harvesting didn't become controversial because it failed. It became controversial because it works too well. And yet, the narrative is falling apart. Modern research is showing the old assumptions are obsolete. Scientists modeling Italian cities, American suburbs, and coastal flood zones have discovered something remarkable. When rainwater harvesting is adopted at scale, it does more than secure drinking water during droughts. It solves the opposite crisis: catastrophic flooding. In a concrete city, rain cannot soak into the earth. It races over asphalt, sweeping oil, heavy metals, and brake dust into the storm drains. When the storm is large enough, those drains overflow into the sewer system, causing combined sewer overflows, massive discharges of raw sewage that poison rivers, kill wildlife, and cost cities billions in federal fines. But imagine a neighborhood where every home has a 2,000-gallon cistern. Those tanks act like thousands of little shock absorbers. They intercept the storm before it becomes a flood. They flatten the peak. They turn a deluge into a controlled release. Rainwater harvesting catches water once, but it creates value twice, supplying clean water on the front end and preventing disaster on the back end. Centralized systems separate these problems into different departments, different budgets, different bureaucracies. But the roof above your head has never cared about institutional categories. It solves both with the same quiet simplicity. And that elegant truth is precisely what makes decentralized water so powerful and so feared. Conclusion: reclaiming the rain. We are living in a moment of profound change. Climate patterns are shifting, droughts linger longer, and when the rain finally arrives, it falls faster than our aging concrete systems can withstand. The belief that 19th century water laws can guide us through 21st century crises is an illusion. We cannot keep treating rain as waste, sending it down gutters only to buy it back later, chemically processed, heavily priced, and controlled by a single utility. Yet the knowledge we need has never disappeared. It survives in the underground cisterns of Pompeii. It shines on the white, stepped roofs of Bermuda. And it is returning now as thousands of homeowners begin to see their rooftops not as dead space, but as living infrastructure. You don't have to go off-grid overnight. The smartest path begins with a few simple steps. First, do the math and understand your roof's potential. Then check your local regulations so your system aligns with the rules where you live. And finally, start small. Add a gutter screen, a first flush diverter, a tank. Use it for your garden. Feel the quiet satisfaction of opening a tap and knowing the water is yours, harvested from the sky, free from meters, free from monthly bills. Because the strongest infrastructure is rarely the biggest or the loudest. It is the decentralized system that keeps working when everything else fails. So the next time rain hits your roof, pause for a moment. Ask yourself whether that sound is just noise or if it is something far more valuable, your own clean, free water waiting to be claimed. If this journey through history, engineering, and law brought new clarity, subscribe and join us here at Historia Prime. Share your own experiences below. What are the rainwater rules where you live? Have you ever considered building a system? Every comment, every discussion, and every shared insight helps preserve the knowledge that creates true resilience. Until next time, look up. The sky is full of answers.